Welcome to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. In-depth conversations and opinion covering a variety of topics from the world of news, sports, and more. Here's Mike McFeely.
It is time for another episode of the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com, and I am in the well-appointed office of Jack Zaleski, former and long time, like really long time. Gutenberg-like long time. Editorial editor of the Forum, and still an employee and still a guy getting things done here at the Forum. So, Jack, welcome to the podcast again.
Well, a couple of things. I'm not on the payroll. You know, I do things for the company on kind of a contract basis. So
okay,
and they're gracious enough to let me have this, as you say, well-appointed office. And I have been here for a long time. As you notice on my wall, Mike, you can see a huge, long portrait of the age of dinosaurs.
Yes, there literally are. There's literally a long portrait of dinosaurs on Jack's wall.
It's about a 6-footer, and it's a reproduction of a mural from the Peabody Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. And I look at it and look at the dinosaurs, and I realize there are things older than I am.
Yes, just a couple, though. But
yes, a couple. They're fossilized, and I'm not yet. So
getting there, though, as am I. Am I, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
But you still are a well of knowledge, and that's what I wanted to talk with you about this morning. Is we are in the midst of a political season, yes, not only around the country, obviously, but here in North Dakota. And every time I turn on my television, which is not that often anymore, but for a sporting event, for a basketball game, for whatever it might be, every time I turn on my TV, I am getting bombarded in March by advertisements from either Tammy Miller or Kelly Armstrong, both of whom are Republicans from North Dakota who want to replace Doug Burgum in the governor's office. Tammy Miller is a longtime businesswoman in Fargo and is the current lieutenant governor. Burgum appointed her not all that long ago. And Kelly Armstrong is a longtime politician in North Dakota, was in the state legislature for years, is now the lone U.S. House representative from North Dakota. And they are squaring off in the primary battle to get on the ballot in November to be the next governor of North Dakota. And it's something. The ads are something, Jack.
Well, I'll tell you, you would think that there was a powerful Democratic Party in North Dakota, which there is not, and that these ads were aimed, from party to party. But they're within the party. Two people allegedly of the same political stripe, and there are a lot of different stripes in the Republican Party these days. Some are yellow. And so you have this.
Did you just say some are yellow?
I did.
Okay, you almost slipped that one by me.
Yeah,
good one.
I did.
Go on. Sorry.
And if you want to expand on that later, we can.
Oh, we can.
But and so what you have is this increasingly nasty battle between Miller and Armstrong for the right to run for governor. And of course, if you have an R behind your name, running for high office in North Dakota, you're going to get elected. So,
right. Whoever wins this is going to be the next governor of North Dakota.
I believe that's true. There is no. I mean, there are a couple of Democratic candidates. Of course, you can't just dismiss them. But given the political history of the state, it is unlikely that a Democrat will win the governor's office. So you're right. Whoever emerges victorious from this down in the dirt intra-party squabble between Miller and Armstrong will be the next governor.
Tammy Miller is Doug Burgum's choice. He has endorsed her.
Yes.
I'm still not quite clear on what wing of the Republican Party that she represents. I don't know really what, other than the Doug Burgum wing of the Republican Party. Maybe you can enlighten me. But Kelly Armstrong historically has been I mean, from my eyes as a Democrat, he's always been more of a moderate, sort of traditional Republican who would represent North Dakota and oil interests and cutting taxes.
Yeah, the standard stuff.
The standard stuff, the 401k Republican or the country club Republican.
I saw him in action a little bit when he was in the legislature. He's a good legislator. You're right, moderate, middle of the road, was not against working with Democrats, even if there were as few as there were then and fewer now. But he is not a bomb thrower. He's not an ideologue of the sort that will not talk to people who have other views. And so he was a reasonable fellow, good legislator, all in all. I mean, if you subscribe to that traditional Republican style of legislating, he was good at it. And I think as a member of the House of Representatives, other than getting sucked up into the Trump nonsense that's going on in the House, he's been a good representative for the state and for the interests of the state, which doesn't mean a whole lot in the House of Representatives when you're only one.
Right. Yep.
But there it is. Miller, no one knew, and many still do not know who she is, or what she stands for, or what her history is, or why she has this passion to become the governor of the state of North Dakota, having had virtually no political experience. Significant political experience until she was appointed the lieutenant governor of the state for reasons that now seem clear, that Doug Burgum wants a third term.
And that's it. We referenced the advertising, and that's kind of where we wanted to start with this. And so now that we have the candidates sort of defined the best that we can define them, Tammy Miller got in early with the advertising, clearly using the Doug Burgum playbook of, I'm an outsider, I'm in the world of business, I love Donald Trump, I love Donald Trump, I love Donald Trump. Oh, I saved my dad's hardware store, lumberyard, or something, which has
been liquidated by the creditors since.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. I did not know that. Mm-hmm. So the bank came and got it.
Well, the creditors did. I don't know who they were, but it was. What's the word? What's the legal term? It's liquidation, but an unwelcome liquidation.
Okay.
Forced liquidation.
Okay. But she apparently, she says, protected that store from some bandit or something with a gun. That has come into question as well.
Yeah, Brockett's a real hotbed of crime.
Well, it is, and that's because of Joe Biden's open border policies, Jack. Is that all? And Kelly Armstrong will tell you this too: is that we're all border states now, Jack. We're all border states because of Joe Biden's open border. But yeah, she apparently took out the 6 shooters out from behind the counter and, fought off Snidely Whiplash or something from the Brockett hardware store. Mm-hmm. But her ads are heavily into that story, that legend, and they are that she is the true conservative, and that she loves Donald Trump and Donald Trump loves her, and Doug Burgum loves Donald Trump and Donald Trump loves Doug Burgum, and Doug Burgum loves her and she loves Doug Burgum, and they all love Donald Trump, and all of that. Kelly Armstrong's ads, from what I've noticed, show that he's a really passionate bow hunter. Loves guns as well, as all North Dakota Republicans do. They love their guns, but he really loves his bow as well. But he too loves Donald Trump, even though I'm not sure he really does. But I'm not sure any Republicans really truly love Donald Trump.
A couple of things here, Mike. The idea that Tammy Miller is an outsider is worse than laughable. If there ever was an insider, a political insider, it's Tammy Miller. And you can tell, that by when you see the friend she keeps. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that she's an outsider is a lot of nonsense. It's just part of the boilerplate, part of the playbook that these folks use. She's not an outsider by a long shot. The second thing is, it struck me strange that that Armstrong would use a bow and arrow as a theme kind of in that ad, which is kind of fun to watch. I mean, probably a good shot with the thing. That's nice. But I associate the bow and arrow with Robin Hood. And, the Robin of Luxley, the guy who, took from the rich and gave to the poor. Republicans don't do that.
No.
The other thing is William Tell, with the apple on the head. And it's all kind of silly, but maybe it's meant to be silly. It's an attention grabber, but I don't think Armstrong fits the Robin Hood image.
No,
given his political perspective.
And what I find interesting is that Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong and Doug Burgum and John Hoeven are fabulously wealthy people. I mean, we're not talking, they've got some money in the bank. These are fabulously wealthy people. Kelly Armstrong's family is into oil.
Long time.
Tammy Miller and her husband have long, and I don't know them. I talked with her husband years ago because he was a fantastic golfer. But they have a large place, from what I understand, in Arizona that they spent a lot of their time at over the years because he's a golfer, and they're not just a little wealthy. They're all fabulously wealthy.
Let's put it this way, Mike. These are not your typical North Dakota working stiff.
No, and I think that's what I'm getting at. Is I don't care if somebody's rich or not. That's good for them. Whatever. I'd
like to know how much time they spend living in North Dakota.
Yes, that would be fun. That'd be a good question
Probably
to know.
Just enough to keep the tax status.
Yep, for sure. Mm-hmm. But that's the interesting thing to me is these candidates are vying for the votes of North Dakotans, which is an incredibly red state these days. And they really have nothing in common with anybody in North Dakota. I mean, they just don't.
I know.
Not your average person. I mean, there's obviously wealth in North Dakota, which is, again, don't care. That's good for them. That's fine.
Well, Armstrong's not trying to paint himself into something he isn't. Burgum and Miller, however, with the small town nonsense they trot out, is kind of funny because, you think about Tammy Miller's hometown, 34 people, I think, live there, and not many people have lived there since the foundation of the town. And interestingly enough, some of the decline in the population of Brockett came during the Trump years, when Miller was claiming that President Biden was flying over these little dots and didn't care about him.
Right.
As if Donald Trump cared about Brockett or Arthur. Hello. Come on, let's be serious here.
Well, and again, people can live whatever life they want to live. It's not for me to say, but
let's not phony it up.
No, and that's what they're doing. Is it takes 5 seconds to check out somebody's Facebook page, and if you look at Tammy Miller's husband's Facebook page, they are world travelers, which is fine. I believe for a while they had a condo in Minneapolis or downtown Minneapolis because that's what they like to do. Which again, that's fine. I don't care.
Why don't they just own up to it?
Yes, but to paint yourself as a good old girl from Brockett, North Dakota, who's whipping her 6-shooter out of her holster to save her grandpa's hardware store, dance for me, Snidely. I mean, it's just stupid.
I know it is, and I think most North Dakotans aren't fooled by that, but it doesn't matter because most North Dakotans are invested in the Republican candidates, whether it's their local candidates or the statewide candidates, and in large part because the Democrats have dropped the ball for the last 20, 30 years and haven't built a grassroots organization that used to exist before 1992, haven't built the kind of organization you need to fund campaigns, haven't recruited the kind of candidates you need to appeal to that conservative base that North Dakota is always going to be. And of course, there was a time when you had that, when you had Arthur Link and Bill Guy and George Sinner, all very highly respected Democrats who knew how to win elections. And you had a legislature that at one time, not that long ago in my memory, was balanced. And was
at least had different voices.
Had different voices, and it was balanced. And you also had Republicans in the legislature not that long ago who knew how to reach across the aisle, who understood what compromise was, who knew how to move legislation, and leaders who would say to the few ideologues that were in the legislature then, no, you're not going to paralyze this legislature with a bunch of nonsensical, social, hot button. Unresolvable issues. You're not going to do that, and they wouldn't. And you had guys like John Darso who would shut that down, Earl Strinden who would shut that kind of thing down, and so you don't have that now. You have weak leadership and strong people in the ranks who have agendas that are destructive. And we're seeing that play out in the legislature and in the way policy is handled out there in Bismarck.
But one thing I find interesting, and this is kind of going off the path of the governor's race, but not entirely, is I think some political observers, and maybe you're not one of them, but I think a guy like Lloyd Amdahl has been over the years, is that they have made the case that the legislature is often far more conservative than the populace itself. That the Republican Party as it exists isn't truly representative of the people of North Dakota. However, a story in our paper recently, done by one of our new reporters, Tasha Carvel, pointed out that a survey indicates that North Dakota is the state of all 50 that is most sympathetic to Christian nationalism. And you can knock the poll, you can knock the group that took the poll, you can splice and dice it however you want. But I don't think there's any question that North Dakota has become more evangelical and more right-wing. I'm not talking conservative, I'm talking right-wing.
Yes.
Craig Cobb right-wing,
yes.
Gordon Call right-wing, than your average everyday Republican that you and I, the old guys, thought of, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I guess I know you don't want to question the survey, but when I looked at that survey and saw how small the sample was, and really small, for most surveys that we know in the newspaper business, when we do polling and surveys with good, reliable companies that do that, surveys are much bigger than that. So I'm a little leery about the value of that survey's conclusions. Nevertheless, you are right. The state has turned more right, and right in a direction that makes it very difficult for other voices to be heard. That they get shouted down, they get threatened, and so people just say, the hell with this, I don't want to get involved. And you see a lot of good people who would make excellent legislators. I'm talking on the Republican side now, saying, no, I don't want to get involved in that because of these extremists who are pretty much driving the arguments out there, and we see that all the time. And the other thing about it is, it's almost a luxury to be able to do that for these people because the state's in such extraordinarily, historically good financial shape. They don't have to pay attention, to keeping the budget balanced. They don't have to pay attention to funding the things they're supposed to fund. So they can do these little side shows, making the legislature and in a nationwide audience the state look bad, and still provide the kinds of funding and that the state needs for the basic services that the state's supposed to provide. Everything from roads and bridges to K-12 education to college funding. So if the state were in poor financial shape, like it was for most of its history, they wouldn't have the luxury of messing around with this nonsensical baloney. So. But
that's where it is, though.
Oh, sure.
Sure. That's just reality. Is that, and I wrote the column that whether you believe the survey again was representative, I believe that the state, you can just tell by the policies that it's implemented, by the people it's electing, by the people who speak for it, that it is a far right politically. It's in that situation, and it's put itself in a neighborhood with states that I don't think you want to be associated with.
Mississippi.
If you're talking about Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and Arkansas and West Virginia.
I read the column, and those states are all in the bottom of all the indicators of a healthy state. Those states are in the bottom.
Yes.
And no, we do not want to be in that group.
But aren't we, and I live in Minnesota, so I shouldn't say we, isn't the state of North Dakota, isn't it edging toward that, though?
Well, it is in some ways when you look at some of the policies that are in the hot button social issues, those kinds of things. But when you look at funding for basic services, including education, we're still good. And I think, that's always been a kind of a bedrock sort of thing. However, there has been in the last three, maybe 4 sessions of the legislature, serious and sometimes successful attempts to erode public education. To spin money off to private schools, which you should never do. To mess with curriculum. That's a modern national curriculum that prepares people for life in this world. But trying to mess with a curriculum so that it meshes with somebody's restricted, constricted, narrow view of what the world is supposed to be. So that could hurt education. They've done that, tried to do that on the college campuses too. And when you see that and you try to recruit good people to teach on our college campuses and they see the legislature interfering in curriculum, then they're going to say, I could go somewhere else to teach, and they will. So we've got all that working for us, and those signs are that if the trends continue as they are, we could join states like Mississippi and Alabama at the bottom of the heap.
If the primary was held today, and we still have the state Republican convention is still going to happen in Fargo soon here, and who shows up for it and who, that's a whole different issue that we've covered and others in our newspaper have covered. If the primary was held today, Jack, in your opinion, would Kelly Armstrong or Tammy Miller be the Republican candidate for governor in November?
Kelly Armstrong.
Okay.
By a significant margin.
Because of name recognition or other reasons?
Name recognition. Tammy Miller, even as she's been lieutenant governor and then chief operating officer, or Doug Burgum, shoe polisher before she, I don't know what it was.
Whatever it was.
And she's relatively new on the political scene, in the political framework, the picture. She's known in Fargo because of her work with border states, which is impressive. You can't take that away from her. However, if it were held now, it'd be Armstrong. The other reason, and this goes to what you were describing about how the state has turned right in a lot of ways. The other reason is that North Dakota does not have a good history of electing women to higher office. I can think of one.
You think that's still, well, Heidi Heitkamp is the obvious one.
Heidi Heitkamp is the only one.
Okay.
And so I think that still is a factor. And the further right the state turns, especially the evangelical right, and the alleged role of women.
God, you think that plays a factor?
I do. I still think it plays a factor.
Jeez, it's 2024.
Yes, I know. But don't forget, there are churches all over this state where you cannot have active participation of women as ministers, for example. I mean, they're all out there. Wow. Yeah,
I just don't live in that world, so
I'm very familiar with some of those churches, and it's a factor. It may not be the factor, but you look at the history and the voting patterns in North Dakota, even in the legislature. There's a handful of women in the legislature. Compared to the number of women in North Dakota. I think there's more women in North Dakota than there are men. So that's a factor. But I think the other one is that Armstrong has a record of public service.
Yep.
Whether you agree with everything he's done or not, it doesn't matter. He has a record of public service. He can go around the state and campaign and say, well, I did this when I was in the legislature. I did this when I was in the House of Representatives in Washington. And that would be true. Miller has no record. She can say that Doug Burgum and I kept your taxes down and cut your taxes down and balanced the budget, not completing that thought that in North Dakota, it's the law that the budget will be balanced at the end of the legislative session, and it is the legislature that does the tax cutting, not the governor.
Yeah, but okay, so it's 2024, as we all know.
Yes.
And every election now has been nationalized. And I don't know that your average everyday North Dakotan, Minnesotan, Iowan, South Dakotan knows how the legislatures work. They don't know the constitutions of each state. They just know that it's Trump and Biden, and Biden is inviting horrible rapists and criminals into our country, and Donald Trump is stopping that, and God bless him for doing that. That's what all elections are coming down to.
Ironic, isn't it? Because he's a horrible rapist.
That's correct, yes.
Ironic.
Yes. But that's what all elections now, and if you talk to these guys who are out, even state legislators in Minnesota or North Dakota, when they're knocking on doors, it always turns around to Trump and Biden. It never is about my street is terrible. Why can't we fund street repair more in the city?
Well, I think that's why you're seeing...
And so that's why Miller is trying to cozy up to Trump as much as she can.
Right.
And there's video of her on stage with Donald Trump and Doug Burgum.
Yes.
And obviously it's all been poll tested. And there's some outfit in Washington, D.C. who's putting together these ads.
Oh, yeah, they're very good ads.
Yep, and they're fine.
Yep,
but it's not so much about that, right? It's about Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Well, I think that's a factor. That's a factor too. But there's also, I think, not all North Dakotans, simply because the state is more conservative than it used to be, and some conservative in ways that I think are damaging. But not all North Dakotans are tied into Trump. The primary voters probably will be. I mean, and that's why this is a primary.
He's going to get 70% this fall.
Oh, he probably
will get 70% statewide.
Will, but I'm not surprised in that, because Biden is not popular here. When was the last time this state voted for a Democrat for president? You got to go back to what? Lyndon Johnson?
Obama got 45%.
Obama did well.
45%. The first time around, 2008.
In fact, I think he won Cass County, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, stop and think about that for a second. In 2008, less than 20 years ago, Barack Obama, statewide in the state of North Dakota, got 45% of the vote.
Yes.
I mean, just process that for a moment.
Well, people were thinking not necessarily that's before Trump came on the scene.
Yep.
And perverted the entire political process the way he has. But I still think there's a sensible factor among most North Dakotans, and most of them are Republicans, so that means most Republicans, who would like to see Trump off the scene, but he's not. And so he's the only place they can go to. They're not going to go to Biden. It's just not going to happen. It's interesting, too, because Biden has their interests at heart far more than Trump does when you look at Biden's policy compared to Trump's. But I still think that when all is said and done, even with the Burgum endorsement that Tammy Miller has, which may not be a positive thing, given that there's been a few polls out that showed Burgum's job approval rating had dropped below 40% a few weeks ago, and he's been kind of an absentee governor for a long time. So whether that endorsement helps or hurts her is to be seen yet. And I know that Armstrong and Miller are trying their damnedest to get the Trump endorsement. My guess is that will go to Miller. Yeah.
Because that will go to Miller. Doug Burgum is obviously sucking up to Donald Trump for various reasons.
Sure, all kinds of reasons. And so that'll go to Miller. But I still believe that Armstrong will prevail in the primary, which will, tell you something about the weight of Trump's endorsements.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's going to consider now. Historically, when I go back over my record on these things, I have been, reliably wrong. So keep that in mind, listeners.
You bring up an interesting point about Burgum. Doug Burgum obviously has some narcissistic tendencies, and so he sees his percentages of votes that he received in his two elections as some sort of idea that he's the most popular guy in the state of North Dakota because he won by the biggest margin of any Republican governor in all 50 states. So I'm the most popular.
Can you remember who he ran against?
Is he? I mean, is Doug Burgum is he a popular guy? Is he a popular governor, despite the fact that he got 70% or near it or whatever it was?
Well, again,
and I don't know that he is. I don't know that.
Again, that's a function of an overwhelmingly Republican electorate.
Right.
Like I said in some
you could put a tree stump on the ballot and it's going to get 60%.
Right. You could put brass monkey in the governor's office and the state's going to run fine.
Yes.
So I think that number, you can be proud of it, I guess, but it would be. You could be more proud if you had some competition when you ran for office. Mm-hmm. And there was no competition in both of his elections. The competition was in the primary when he knocked off the former attorney.
Overwhelmed Wayne Stenjum with money and frankly energy and youth
and a good campaign and all that stuff. And so that was a real contest because Stenjum was well known and popular in some regards. But the idea that it's a big deal to get 65-70% vote in North Dakota as a Republican. Well, really? I mean, that's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. So.
Do you think that the animosity between Tammy Miller and Doug Burgum and Kelly Armstrong in his camp is real, or is it just a function of politics?
No, I think it's real. The last group of ads that have come out where Armstrong has pretty much in his last ad portrayed Miller as a phony and a liar.
A liar, yes,
yeah, pretty much.
By the way, Tall Tale Tammy.
That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good. Whoever came up with that in the Armstrong
that's kind of
consultant campaign
that's kind
thing.
of an Annie get your gun sort of thing that you remember. Tall Tale Tammy, yeah. So and I think that stung her. She responded quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Her ad came out quickly, and she called him a liar and all that stuff.
Yep.
So these things they may seem heated during a campaign, but I think that kind of personal attack lingers. And there is a division, obviously a division in the party, or we wouldn't be seeing a primary between two, well-funded people with endorsements running against each other from the same party. So there's a rift, there's a division, and these things, everybody says, well, then we'll all fall in behind the candidate. And of course they will, because we're such in our state. But the rift will remain within the party.
But this is not, I don't know if this is a rift. In the real world, I don't know, whatever Tammy Miller's policies are, I get the sense that they're not all that much different than Kelly Armstrong's, because they're, again, this is about power. This is about, I want to be the governor. It's not about a difference in policy between Kelly and Tammy. It's a difference of, I want to be governor. No, I want to be governor. No, I want to be governor, because that's, for Kelly Armstrong, it's a lifelong thing. For Tammy Miller, it's something that she wants to do because she's bored of doing, or whatever. The reason is she wants to.
Well, I think, and give Armstrong, some credit. He, it's that old cliche, pay your dues. He has.
Yes.
He's worked from the ground up. Whether he's from a wealthy family or not, he's worked the political system in the right way to get where he is now and to position himself to run for governor. She has not. She's a whole different cat. She took the Burgum route.
But Burgum won?
And Burgum won. So there's something to be said for doing that if all you want to do is win. If all you want to do is win. Maybe there's some sincerity about public service here. I can't see it yet. But maybe it's there. Fending off an alleged robber from the lumberyard is a whole lot different than being governor of the state. So,
Doug Burgum, speaking of him, he hasn't been out there, at least publicly, as much as he was a while ago. Openly campaigning for Trump and flying all over the country and getting the pat on the head. I don't know if that's by design. I don't know what. I'm not in that circle. But what is his end game here? What is Doug Burgum going to end up doing after November, whatever, 4th or 8th or whatever?
If it's obvious right now that he's the puppet master with Miller.
Yep.
He's the guy pulling the strings, or with his hand in her back, and that sort of thing. But he's the this whole episode for Miller becoming a serious candidate started a long time ago. I mean, to get her visibility when she was first this CEO position, then suddenly they pushed out Brent Sanford, which of course the Brent Sanford company won't say it that way, but the insiders that I know in the Capitol, that was a very orchestrated move to shove him aside, to get her in, to give her some visibility before the run for governor. It was all designed, planned quite well. So his Burgum's role in all this is, it's almost like he's going to get a third term as governor.
Sure.
Because I don't know if Tammy Miller, other than her work at border states, but in terms of politics and policy, if Tammy Miller has ever had an original thought.
Oh, jeez.
So, it doesn't seem like it.
She's a very accomplished woman, Jack.
Well,
I mean,
that's why I always give her credit for what she did in the private sector with Border States. Great company. People who work there love it. They've made a lot of money working there. Now it's employee-owned. It's really a success story, and she was there for a number of years, 14 years or so in a top job. You give her credit for that. That's not politics. That's running a good business. And those are two different things. The idea that somehow that someone's good in business is going to be a good governor or a good senator is a bunch of nonsense. I mean, it just it doesn't compute. North Dakota buys into that all the time, and it just doesn't make any sense. However, Burgum's role is hedging all his bets. Trump wins, he gets something in the administration. Trump doesn't win, he has Tammy Miller as his third term as governor. He's all right. I mean, it's not like he's got nothing to do. He can go skiing in Switzerland. And,
he can do whatever he wants.
Skiing in Switzerland, he can take a cruise in the Bahamas on his own boat. Who knows? That's up to him. He's made his money fairly and honestly and can spend it the way he wants, including to support someone running for office. Armstrong, again, whose family is is wealthy because of oil and the law firm and all those things, is a different cat. He seems to be, in my mind now, he seems to be more serious about governing and policy and doing what he can to make things better in North Dakota. I believe that.
Last thing before I run here. We found out today or this morning in a story in our paper that in the North Dakota Republican Party platform, which is going to come up here at the convention and be voted upon at the convention in Fargo at the Shields Center or the NDSU Arena here soon, there's a line in there relating to abortion that would apparently criminalize women seeking an abortion, having an abortion,
yes,
as well as collaborators, right, if you will. And it seems it would also go after in vitro fertilization, which was a story recently in Alabama because the Alabama Supreme Court made IVF illegal before the state legislature stepped in and changed it because they realized it was going to be an absolute blank show for the Republicans everywhere if they outlawed IVF.
Yeah.
But that apparently is going to come up for a vote at the North Dakota Republican Convention.
Yes.
One of your good friends, Yana Myrdal, a strident anti-abortionist. I mean, the most strident. Yes. And really, frankly, somebody who's been very successful in the state of North Dakota. She's now a state legislator. Before that, she was with one of these anti-abortion policy makers.
She's worked her well on the legislature, too.
Yep. But she is stridently anti-abortion, and she is one of the people who's pushed and helped pass some of the strictest abortion laws in the country in the North Dakota legislature. She has apparently come out and said, whoa, what's in the North Dakota Republican Party platform is even too extreme for me.
She has.
That's what she said.
Yes.
Now, what do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, the resolution was passed by the executive committee on a vote of 6-1 or something.
6 or 7-1, yes,
something like that. So, and should it pass at the convention? It's a resolution of a political party's convention. It's not law. It's not anything near law. Not anything close to law. Now, Myrdal's statement, it could be that she sees this as an opportunity to paint this particular resolution as extreme as she gets more extreme and no one notices. It could be a cover for really being more extreme by saying this one is too extreme.
Yes.
That's a strategy, and it wouldn't surprise me to see her move in that direction. However, she did say quite clearly that this one's too extreme, and it shouldn't, and she would not support it. And again, it's a resolution passed by 6 people. 7 people, or 6 or 7 people, goes to the convention. Should it pass, it's a resolution of one political party that has no force of law, or other than it does show you where the party is.
I was just going to say, yes. But you're talking about, first of all, and I think it will pass because the people who will attend the North Dakota Republican Convention, we've already heard that some what you and I would call more normie Republicans are not going to attend.
Attendance is going to be way down.
But it's going to be the hardcores of the hardcores.
Right.
And so that's why it stands a chance to pass as being the platform of the Republican Party, this resolution. I know that it's not law, but in a state that is, as we've already talked about, going farther and farther to the right, and there are people like Yana Myrdal and others who are stridently anti-abortion in the state of North Dakota.
Yep.
You just have to look at the laws already on the book. Who's to say they're not going to try to pass this at some point in the state legislature as a law in the state if it becomes the Republican Party's official stance?
I have no doubt that someone would introduce a bill to that degree. Whether it can get through the legislature and signed by the governor, whoever that governor might be at the time, that's a whole other matter. You know, there's some disappointment in that Governor Burgum signed some of this stuff.
Yep. They all have bigger visions of themselves, Jack.
Well, I know.
Doug Burgum had a bigger vision for himself, and so he signed some horrible laws, in my view, because he knows the political game.
He did. And it gave him a great stepping stone to the presidential nomination. Oh, wait. That didn't work. So, but he got a ride on Trump's airplane.
You got a pat on the head and a free bottle of water on the airplane, which I'm sure was from Costco. That whatever. But anyway, this resolution is. I know it's not going to be law if it's passed, but to me it's another alarm bell, Jack. It's
an indication of where a significant number of people in North Dakota who have an influence on policy. It's an indication of where they are, and it's concerning. So, no doubt about it.
All right, thank you.
About it. Thank you. It's always fun to be able to kick it around with you.
Oh, I was expecting a shot at me there.
No, I'm waiting. I'm trying to get a good shot at you, but I can't because
That's what the awkward pause was. I could hear the gears.
Well, I'm trying to get a good shot at you, but I can't because this has been a good discussion.
It has. It's been good. All right, thank you, Jack.
Let's do it again.
We will soon enough. Jack Zaleski, former editorial page editor of the Forum, from his well-appointed office on the first floor of the Forum. This is the McFeely Mess Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the McFeely Mess Podcast at inforum.com. For more podcasts and columns, head to inforum.com and search Mike McFeely.